What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the very first ever episode of the Prairie Puck Podcast. I'm your host, Jake, alongside me with Ryan, the coach, and obviously Zach from the Nolan Hockey Podcast. And welcome to our first episode of the Prairie Puck Podcast, like I just said, because this is going to be a weekly show where we are going to be talking about all things sports, not only just hockey, not only Winnipeg Jets things, but anything that really catches our eye or something that we want to share with you listeners. So without any further ado, let's jump into our first real discussion point on this channel. And that's what I want to talk about is the Winnipeg Jets finally snapping that 7-game skid against the Calgary Flames last night. That was a great team win and a great morale win, and considering the fact that Blake Wheeler gets his 800th career point, Scheifele on the same play, his 500th, not to mention Paul Maurice with his 400th win as with the Winnipeg Jets. A lot of highlights, a lot of memories, and finally snapping that skid. What are you guys' thoughts on what was good, and what were your guys' thoughts about what wasn't the greatest? Start with you, Zach. My bad, boys.
Well, we'll get used to it.
Exactly.
I would say there's a couple good things. Obviously, it's nice to have all those achievements show up in a game that we clinch. I would argue that definitely it would have been a lot nicer to have clinched a lot earlier. I think there's a very poetic justice in Wheeler and Scheifele hitting a milestone on the same play. That sounds very per the course, as does Paul Maurice in the same game. It's funny because with in that game, there's just so much that went right. It was really hard to criticize it, especially since at this point we were just just win. I don't care how you do it, just win. And then afterwards focus on getting back to it. But it was just a lot. It was just a good feeling, honestly, for me especially. Just a good feeling win.
Over to you, Coach. Ryan?
Coach.
Okay.
Ryan, yeah.
Okay, we got to sit up for this one. First off, step one, always celebrate the win. Just take the win. Don't criticize it. But we're three talking heads. We're three talking heads on a podcast. So what are we going to do? We're going to criticize it because we have nothing better to do. So the caveat of not criticizing it, step one, that's out the door now. Let's talk strategy. Coach Maurice, he must be listening to our podcast. What have we said?
Hell yeah.
He needs to play with Morrissey. And the reason he needed to play with Morrissey from the beginning is when we talk about speed. Everyone talks about speed in hockey or playing fast. Playing fast doesn't necessarily mean skating fast. It means moving the puck fast. It means transitioning from offense to defense or east to west with a simple 1 or 2 passes and being able to go 200 feet down the ice in under 3 seconds. And you can do that with Pionk and Morrissey. You have equal players who can skate with equal speed. Pionk and Morrissey can cover for each other because they have that speed, and you can push 5 guys up the ice. You couldn't do that with Tucker Poolman. The guy's a pylon. He can't skate. People were on Josh Morrissey all year. Well, guess what? I'd be on somebody too if I had a giant anchor around my back dragging me down named Tucker Poolman. So it was really nice to see that together. It was really nice to finally get Ville Heinola into the lineup. What I love about Heinola, oh my God, we've all been saying it.
I know, man.
Speed.
It's so he made such an impact last night, and I just couldn't get over that because it was so frustrating in a way, because it's he's so impactful in one game, yet he's been wasting away just in the press box for so long now, not playing, just bouncing between the Moose, having a great season on the Moose, being the power play catalyst, running the defensive core, and having another great year after coming off of the Liga, going into the World Juniors, not even further past the Liga season he had before the start of this year. He's just been phenomenal at all different levels of hockey this year, so it's great to see him thrive at the NHL. I had to jump in because I just can't get enough of Ville Heinola. It's just fantastic to see him playing like this. He's so good. The future of this team got the back end without any question.
Well, and you know what? The reason we all saw it, but he wasn't in the lineup, Coach Maurice, he doesn't like coaching the little details in what he calls non-pro players or rookies. You hear him say it all the time.
Oh, I know. It's frustrating.
He's a real pro. He's a real pro. Okay, we get it, Paul. But you should have been spending the last 35 games developing him into a real pro. So when you went into the playoffs, you had another speedster who can move a puck and work with a guy like DeMello or Forbert. And it looks like it's going to be DeMello. I have been ragging on DeMello all year, and not because of advanced stats, but because, frankly, he hasn't done the little things well, but he has now come out of his shell. I think Dylan DeMello is back to the Dylan DeMello we saw at the end of last year.
Exactly.
That's huge. Huge.
Exactly.
If this is the Dylan DeMello we get, I'm in.
Exactly, and this is the Dylan DeMello that I've been believing in, that I've been preaching to fans on why you look at keeping him over Stanley if you have to expose a defenseman going into Seattle's expansion draft. Because DeMello wants to be here, he's signed, which is always an important thing. I know a lot of people don't like to hark on that area of it, but remember, we're the Winnipeg Jets. We're not a free agent destination, and it's a reality we all have to accept as hockey fans of that club. So to have a guy that wants to stay here, that is without a doubt a very talented defenseman, is a bonus and always a bonus for this club. So to have him thriving at a level that we saw at last year when playing with Morrissey after being acquired, I think that this is a great thing moving forward. I couldn't agree more, Coach.
Well, and before, like, Zach, I'm going to get your take on this, because they call it the eye test, right? So your advanced stats that you showed on your last video there, Jake, that isn't the eye test. That's what's actually happening behind the game.
I love to stress that, yeah.
It wasn't right, and people weren't wrong thinking DeMello wasn't playing because their eyes weren't fooling them. My eyes are well trained to see what is going to happen to a player skill-wise. It wasn't there. Zach, what do you think? Like, what did you think about DeMello before last game?
It's funny because, like, I would say with DeMello, it's been a case of kind of redemption as the season has went on. Especially early on in the season, it felt like the most times you saw him were on the replays of a goal that got scored on by the opposition. And as the season went on, I think he's been able to better establish and better keep to his game. Like, they talk about the goalless streak. It's not who he is.
Exactly. I like to stress that.
Offense. He got an assist last night. But it's one of those things where it's like, we have so many offensive players that are on the top 6 that are there to generate offense. We don't always have to rely on the defense to move the puck up to them. We have guys that can do that in Pionk and on Morrissey on an occasion. But that's not the type of player we need from DeMello. We need a guy who can play back, a guy who can cover when needed to. It's one of those things where I've always seen him as, I guess, a better Pullman by default in terms of how they play. But at the same time, their performances are so much better. When I don't see DeMello, it's not because he's not playing a great game. It's because the simple things are being executed and they're becoming expectations.
That's what I believe about DeMello as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really notice a lot of his contributions when it comes to him just being a very quiet defenseman, and
yes.
And I really appreciate that value, especially for a team that is not not stable at all defensively. So that's why I'm so on about DeMello, because I feel like without him, how bad our defense really is would have been exposed a lot longer ago. And I say that not lightly, because our defense has been exposed for being horrible this season, but I really do think that without him, it would be even worse than what we've seen. That's just my personal opinion, though. But you're allowed to have that because, like you said, you're trained and you see things that probably me, even Zach, don't even really notice.
Okay, so here's what I was seeing with DeMello before this game. Number one, you said we see the replays of DeMello on the ice when goals go in. That isn't fooling anybody. There's a reason he's on the ice when goals go in, because there's a problem. It's not just Dylan DeMello. Dylan DeMello is part of a 5-man group, 6-man group with the goalie. But when you repeatedly have the same player on the ice and goals are going in, it may not necessarily be directly because of DeMello's fault, but it's how he fits in with the lineup. I talked about speed before. What is happening is the old school hockey thought is you want a defenseman to just protect the back of the net, do the simple little things and stay out of it. The game has transitioned away from that when you have the offensive talent that the Jets have with the speed the offensive has. If you don't have a puck moving, good skating defenseman on the back end, you can't move the puck up to those forwards. And if you can't move the puck up to the forwards, you end up with what we call gap between the forwards and the defenseman. It widens too much. When that gap widens too much, you get odd man rushes. And what killed us all year?
Exactly, odd man rushes. Exactly, without any question.
And it wasn't because of turnovers. It's because our defensemen, our bottom 4, right? You have Pullman separated for some reason with Morrissey, and you got Forbert with Pionk.
Not to mention Nathan Beaulieu being a top pairing defenseman prior to his injury.
That drove us nuts.
Every line you're playing, you have a defenseman that is a weak link causing a gap differential between the forwards, and you get exposed on the rush. And that's what I mean by playing with speed. You got to play at the same speed.
Coach, I totally agree with what you're saying there, and I think but I think coming back to the side of it being talking about DeMello and what you said of it not being maybe exactly his fault for being on, in my personal opinion, and I like Neil Pionk as an offensive defenseman, but I don't personally think there's a single Jets defenseman that can really move the puck well in transition, and I've harked on that a lot throughout this season because you just don't see a lot of good plays and good puck carrying plays from our defenders. Not to mention we can't make a breakout pass at times to save our life. We've struggled with that for years, though. When we didn't have Dustin Byfuglien in the lineup in the past, it was very obvious where the breakout passing and where that elite type of defensive drive came from our back end, and it was Byfuglien, and even to an extent Tyler Myers. We all hated Tyler Myers in our own end, but when he was in the offensive zone, we knew that was where he was at his best, so we weren't as worried there because he knew he could drive the play well and shoot the puck. But I think the Jets personally, even with Morrissey, Pionk, they don't have a guy that can really drive play, and that's why I wanted Ville Heinola so much, because the Jets just, like you said, the Jets offense is so dynamic, and they're undervalued, they're completely underused, and the dynamics that they have are not really valued by the team because they have to play that whole dump and chase style because they don't have 5 guys dynamically moving the puck up the ice. They only have 3. Because we never have the defense jumping on the rush. And when they do that whole back and forth pass to each other and bring it around the boards. They never do something where they're actually jumping in on the play, minus Forbert maybe coming in on a pinch or Pullman at times at will. Because think about it, all Morrissey does is shoot into the lane and always get his shot blocked. Pionk's good at finding a shot through the lane and getting it on net, but only really on the power play or when he has time to really get that perfect shot. And then you don't have really, and then like you said, slugs everywhere else in pylons. You don't really have any speed there. So the Jets, to become more of a complete team, like I've been saying for a while, they need to get some offensive sparks. They need to bring in a guy that can move the puck, a guy like Ville Heinola, who's fast, like you, and everything you said is exactly what the defense needs, and that's why he should have been playing longer. And that's why I think I appreciate DeMello, and that kind of brings it back to DeMello, because DeMello does stabilize the defense, even though he's on for a lot of goals. I don't really blame him, like I say, for those, even though he does make boneheaded plays like everyone this year has. I think that it is more of just the team needing a stable guy back there, and yeah, he's been responsible for some boneheaded plays, but like you said, playing shelter roles, playing with Stanley for a lot of times, and you're not going to be the best guy on the ice, even if you're good defensively in 13 minutes. You're not going to be perfectly utilized every night when you're playing on the third pairing for most of the season, even though last year you played with Josh Morrissey on the top, and you looked much better. So you have that's a big part, I think, in all of it.
Yeah, but I would say though is to like, and that kind of goes with my feeling about this too, is because I feel like what Paul Maurice did, especially with the defensive pairings, was he knew his defense was lacking. So instead of just saying this is our 2 best guys, they will play the top pair, then we'll go like so on and so forth. He just said, okay, well let's just put guys who can maybe plug the other guy, or like try to pick up the other guy's slack on each of the lines. So they pretty much spread out the entire season. It felt like they spread out Morrissey, then they put Pionk on the second pairing, then they put DeMello on the third. And they tried to have it so that maybe one guy could pick up the other guy's slack, but at the same time, it just diluted all 3 pairs.
Yeah.
Like, each pair had an anchor.
So, Zach, let me ask you a question then. If you had an anchor on a line and you're an elite NHL player and you are able to make decisions in nanoseconds, are you going to attack the side with Josh Morrissey or Neil Pionk, or are you going to attack Forbert and Pullman? Where are you going to carry the puck?
I agree with you on that, but I would also say that if I'm playing a player in that game, I don't always have the luxury of picking which line I'm matched up against. And there is a way to have to use guys in less minutes that will, because at the end of the day, we can't scratch them. So we have to use them in some aspect. I would rather have 2 pairings that are completely solid that I can rely on for more shifts than have all of our pairings just kind of place like par.
Like, let me
and we're saying the same thing, Zach, because you have to have strength with strength with strength, and then bury that third line. If you don't have a 5-6 pairing that can keep up, you give them 9 to 10 minutes. That's it.
Yep.
They're relief for 1 and 2, and you hammer 1 and 2 for 28 to 32 minutes. Hammer them.
Exactly. Well, and that's the problem, though, Coach, is that like when you have your best defensive defenseman playing 13 minutes a game, you can't really allow your top 6 to be good. And look how. Let me ask you this: when did your opinion on Forbert slip? Because I feel like almost everyone was pretty happy with him for the first 15 games of the season. I would say a very bang for buck contract, playing in the top 4, getting points, jumping in on the rush. He looked good all up until that Hoglander stuff. I feel like that's when he really fell off. And let me ask you that. Because I feel, in my personal opinion, just my personal opinion, when I look at Jets being like the worst pylons we've ever iced, I have Mark Stewart pretty high up there. But like I do. I think personally, Derek Forbert has been one of our worst defensemen ever iced within the last probably 35 games, because he's beat all the time against elite players. He's blown past. Like, he just looks completely gassed out there, and he's coming off of injuries, and he hasn't been like healthy for a while now. And to have him come in and be a consistent top 4 guy, not miss a single game all season, like, I feel like it's really taken a toll on him. And that goes back to what we said about balance. Paul Maurice sent the same shit out for 7 games in a row before we ever saw any defensive lineup change, minus Ben being slotted in for a rookie. And that's a problem, because we need to be able to, like you said, have defense that is very well balanced if you're going to roll it out, and have it stacked if you have a weak issue, right? Like, have those great two pairings, and then if you're going to play a pairing 13 minutes, have it be the weakest one. That makes total sense. I don't think anyone would really be, upset or opposed to that type of opinion, and that's a problem. Because the Jets have just been misused. And I say this in all my game reactions. I just feel like the reason why the Jets lost so many of those games they did, especially against the games like Ottawa even, is because they were outcoached. And even by teams that don't have a great record, because their defense was not changed. And when you send out the same stuff that is being exposed every night against even subpar teams, subpar playoff teams, that's a problem. And it's just living in denial if you think that that's not the issue. They won, but even in this game, Forbert didn't look great at times, even playing a 13-minute sheltered role. And that's a problem, because maybe you pull him out, but Paul Maurice loves loyalty. And like you said, he loves the guy that knows what he's doing, the grit, the veteran, all that. And that's exactly what Forbert provides. And that's why he stayed where he has for so long. Like, think about this. This has been one of the first games all season long that Forbert dropped out of the top 4.
Oh, do you want to know what happened to Forbert, in my opinion?
Well, I'd love to hear it, honestly.
Two things happened to Forbert. There's two tales of him. At the beginning of the year, he was doing the simple things that he knew how to do and was brought into the system to do. And Neil Pionk Neil Pionk wasn't covering for him per se, but Neil Pionk wasn't being as aggressive as Neil Pionk normally is. Pionk needs to roam. When you watch Pionk play, he moves from left side to right side. He doesn't hold his position traditionally like a left-sided defenseman normally, or a right-sided defenseman normally would. So what ends up happening is two things. Forbert is there to block shots, be physical, and be in a lane. That's it. Done deal. That's Derek Forbert. He's not going to do anything more than that, and every puck he has is high and off the glass. We're not looking at transition. We're just out of the zone, moving on, get off the ice. He blocks more shots than anybody on the Winnipeg Jets, so he does that well, which is good. He's physical, which we need because we got pushed around, which is good. But then he starts playing outside of that role, and he starts believing a little bit of his own hype and doing a little bit too much.
I agree with that.
And he falls off. And he ends up doing too much because you can only keep Neil Pionk like a stallion in the stable for so long. So Pionk starts roaming. He's looking for points. He's looking for hits because Neil Pionk leads their team in hits. When you're making a hit, you're out of position.
Crazy to think that.
It is. But Neil Pionk, he's doubled anybody on our team. He's like over 125 hits. But every time Pionk lays a hit, now you're playing a one-on-one against Derek Forbert, and I want that one-on-one all day. Neil Pionk shouldn't be laying hits with a guy like Derek Forbert. Neil Pionk's got to let Forbert lay the hits or just back off and contain. So we lost that. They lost that. And that's why Pionk should have been playing with Morrissey from the beginning, because you just can't play with slow. Eventually you get sick of it. And he did. So Forbert falls off. Ta-ta, back to the bottom 6 like you should be. You're $1 million guy, no problem. And now you have the defensive pairings, in my eyes, this close to where they should be. Identical.
Right. I would say a lot of the time, like a lot of the stuff that really showed where, like, that Forbert doesn't fit in was watching him in, like, the Edmonton games. Because if like, we all remember, there was a solid game, at least 1 or 2 solid games, where Pionk had McDavid. Like, he was McDavid's shadow pretty much. Whenever McDavid went on the ice, Pionk was the defense group that went out with him. And as time went on, it felt like...
Oh. Should have done a closed invite.
I really should. I thought about that because I was...
Apologies about that little jump cut right there. We had our little buddy popping in to say hello in the middle of our podcast recording, so shout out to him. And nonetheless, back to Zach talking about how Pionk was basically McDavid's shadow for a couple of those Oiler games. So Zach, please continue your thoughts there on about that.
Like, it was one of the... Exactly like what I said, like... He was his shadow, and he went out there, and he played his role well. He was bodying McDavid on some shifts. He was making sure that McDavid didn't have a lot of room to go, especially, like, in the later half of the season. A familiar scene that I always remember is there is a rush where a guy's breaking past our defenseman. Forbert was behind it always, it felt like. And, like, he got exposed. I would also agree with Coach, though, too, is I think, Coach, did you mention the Hughlander shenanigans type thing?
I was talking about that as well, yeah.
There was that as well, where he was undisciplined, he got called out on his undisciplined, and then he lost the fight. So right away, you have lost the moral victory there. That's when I felt
like he lost his mojo.
It was, yeah, and then since then, you just see Forbert making a bad pinch. Forbert not really picking up the slack for his partner pinching because he needs to come back more. It's one of those things where, like, exactly what you guys said, though, was believing in your own hype. and then not going back to the simple plays that got you to that point. Say, yeah.
Well, and you know what you really nailed there from a tactical perspective. I hear a lot of Winnipeg fans talking about this. I don't know if you got it on your stream, Jake. They're talking about, are we going to match Lowry or Scheifele against McDavid in the playoffs?
Yeah, I get that all
wrong.
the time, and I think that is just crazy.
Wrong.
Why would you
wrong,
match one of the
wrong.
worst defensive centers in the game against one of the, like, that just makes no sense. Scheifele does not play D.
You're not matching a center against McDavid. That's the main point. Zach's nailed it.
Exactly.
You're matching a defenseman.
Exactly.
And it is Pionk. He's bang on. Pionk is the guy. So Morrissey and Pionk need to be out every time the McDavid line's out. Outside of that, what's really interesting, you put Lowry out. Okay, McDavid's going to play 25 to 27 minutes. You want Lowry on the ice for 27 minutes? That means Scheifele
Nope.
and Connor and Ehlers, if he's back, are going to get less minutes because you got Lowry out there. No chance. You need your horses in the stable. They got to play. Line 1 matches line 1, baby.
Mm-hmm.
I
would
agree.
say I wouldn't hate line 3 matching with line 1 in terms of just the odd defensive zone coverage, because in terms of coverages, line 3 isn't bad. That being said, purposefully picking which line will go out for just a random shift, like in the offensive zone, and saying, yep, line 3, why? McDavid lines out. That is not okay. Like, put your offensive line out when you have offensive chances. Put your defensive line out, or your defensive forward line, if you want to if you really think you're going to get hemmed in your own zone, which no one wants to, but it happens.
So here's what's really interesting about that, Zach. You're right. You nailed it. In the defensive zone, Lowry's going out for every draw because he's our best draw man, and that's who you need to have out there. So that line's going. Morrissey and Pionk are going if it's going to be McDavid. But here's the really interesting thing. If you put Lowry with Morrissey and Pionk in the defensive zone, eventually those guys got to get a rest. And now you have the Scheifele line or the Dubois line playing with, well, you better hope they're playing with Hanola, because if it's Forbert and Pullman coming out, now you got dust.
Exactly.
You got dust trying to pass the puck up to the forwards. That's done. You may as well just write that shift off. You're getting no offense.
I sit and
I agree with what you guys are saying there about rolling the lines, but I actually think, to counter your point a little bit, I personally, just my opinion, even though Paul Stastny has at times been great in the top 6, he's really meshed in well with Ehlers at times, and same with Wheeler and Scheifele. He's just looked good where he's been played at a lot of different points in the lineup throughout the season. But honestly, I would take Paul Stastny as my third line center just for faceoffs, and because of I still think he can drive the play well, and I would drop Lowry down to the 4th and play an even strength center core and maybe play less of your wings for your bottom 4th lines or something like that, because I think Lowry, especially matching up against the Oilers, where the Oilers lack is really good strength down the middle, because they have a lot of dynamic, like they're top heavy obviously, but then when you look everything else, very weak. I think having 4 guys that can take the center, win the faceoffs, play hard, drive play to the net, especially in the bottom 6, could be very, very underrated strength that the Jets haven't tried necessarily against the Oilers team when they've struggled against them.
What's your top 6 look like, Ben? Like if you're just just your top 2 lines, then
well,
if you drop down.
Personally, if you want me to get really experimental, like if I put me in coach tomorrow and Paul Maurice has no say, I'm putting Scheifele on the wing and putting Pierre-Luc Dubois at the center spot.
For first line?
Yep. I'm stacking my first line, and then I'm putting Nikolai Ehlers as well up there if I have to on his offside, just to help drive play, because I feel like that would be amazing for how he can move the puck, and you've got great finishers, a guy that can crash the net, play defense. It's everything you need for a playoff line.
Center.
For that Pierre-Luc Dubois on that line. Scheifele's the winger.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on my second line, I would probably put up Paul Stastny and do what the original plan was with having Laine there, and put Connor with Paul Stastny. And then honestly, personally, in my opinion, I would put Christian Vesalainen or a guy like maybe Jansen Harkins evenly, or even potentially Andrew Kopp in there. Any of those 3 guys on that second unit. And then for your third and fourth, you can basically make it whatever you want, because you know that Harkins plays well with Lewis, and you know he plays well with Thompson. You know your Andrew Kopp is going to play anywhere wherever he goes. Same with Lowry. And I think that would be a really dynamic puck moving and scary offensive threat. And then defense, we all know what our defense would be, is very similar to what we saw last night. But that's just me. That's just I like experiments, and I personally think that there's a lot of untapped potential in those type of Jets guys.
Well, Maurice is okay with throwing lines in a blender, so you might get your wish. Let's be
maybe
honest.
One day, but that's just that's just my opinion.
We didn't think we were get. I never thought I'd see Scheifele centering Appleton and Kopp.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I was like, okay. Interesting idea. Let's hope it works, Paul.
Coach, coming from your standpoint, as a coach, and having to balance lines, bail after players, I'm very curious what your ideal lines would be actually as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so if everybody's healthy, my line one is going to be my 3 best players. It always has to be. They play with speed together. It's Scheifele, and yes, Ehlers is making a case to be our best forward, but that centerman has to drive it. So I'm still going to say Scheifele is your best forward. Ehlers is number 2. He must play with Scheifele. He has to.
Exactly. He has to.
Every time Ehlers is on the ice, he makes things happen on both sides. He is dynamic. He has some of the best stats. He has the best eye test. Ehlers drives the line right now, so he's got to be there. And you cannot take KFC off there because that's your trigger man. That's finishing. The 3 young guys got to play together. They play good speed. Then I move into the second line where I really like Dubois and the big bodies like Stastny, Dubois, and Wheeler playing at the same speed because they're going to beat you up, get in front of the net. They're going to put junk in. And when I'm balancing the lines, I'm not changing the Lowry line. Lowry, Kopp, Appleton, not changing fourth line. How I'm rolling them, neutral zone and offensive zone. If the line one of the Oilers, the McDavid line's coming out, I'm throwing the Scheifele line out with Morrissey, Pionk. As soon as he comes out of the lineup, McDavid, I'm immediately hitting you with Dubois. Immediately, because that line 2 is going to crush their line 2. And then as soon as you're in a defensive zone situation and face off, I'm getting the Lowry line out there. I'm probably not playing a lot of the fourth line unless they put their fourth line out first. I know Paul Murray talks about this all the time. You got to rest your players. Our fourth line is good. I see nothing wrong with them. But you really, if you're going to outscore the Oilers, which you're going to have to do, you've got to make sure your scorers have maximum ice time. And our top 3 lines are the best top 3 lines in the NHL. So you can get goals out of all 3. That's how I'd run it.
Well, exactly. And I think the thing with the fourth line is it's not that they're doing anything wrong. It's just a low ceiling. Like, they're hitting all the expectations we have for them. But at the same time, we are having those expectations because we know their limitations. And knowing a fourth line's limitations works wonders. For the longest time, they had a great plus minus. I think they still do, actually, where because we knew that we could use them in certain situations, just don't overexpose them. There were some games where I would talk on Jake's stream, and I'm like, feels like we've seen Perot all night. And Jake would be like, yeah, he played 8 minutes. And we're like, oh, well then. Like, and it's because he had the puck, so they have to call his name when he has the puck. And it's one of those things where it's like, I like them, but at the same time, I know that we can't rely too much on them. Because if you're relying on your fourth line to score, like that Montreal game, you are not going to win.
Exactly.
Yep. And it'll be interesting because whoever's the home team, right, gets last change. So it's the visiting team that is going to set the tone for the fourth line. The visitor throws out the fourth. If the visiting team of either team throws out the fourth line, I guarantee you the other coach will throw out his fourth line. It's this weird game of honor. They're like, okay, you give him a shift, I'll give him a shift, as opposed to what I would do because I'm kind of a dirty bugger with it. I'd just throw my first line out.
Yeah. I feel like then they'd remember that though. Like if they put your first line out, they'll be like, okay, when they go for a change, they're coming out now. Like
correct. Yep, you're correct.
Exactly.
Now you're mismatched again. There are times from a coaching perspective where you will actually weirdly odd your lines that way so you're not matched properly because you go, when you have a mismatch, our goalie is better than yours and we think we'll keep the puck out of the net. But when our mismatch comes, because inevitably it will, we're going to bury it. Yeah. That is a viable strategy. It's a troll. It is a coaching troll, but you watch, they do it. They do it all the time.
Yeah.
Well, what any other things you guys want to talk about related to the Jets and kind of this whole winning streak thing right now? Because we're covering a lot of broad strokes really with all the new stuff we're talking about.
How was the third period, guys? I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember anything of the third period.
I wonder why.
Getting disappointed about Kopp's penalty shot. And I was just but I was sitting on the floor at this point. And I was just like, he didn't score, and then right back to the Smirnoff. So
okay, I've got a big question for you guys. I actually don't know this answer. So the first time in my life, I feel like I don't have a hockey answer. I have no clue.
Okay.
Why are the Jets producing such low shot totals? We scored, we got 4 goals on 19 shots. This is a problem. It's been a problem all year, and I actually don't know what it is. Okay. I'm out of ideas.
I have a theory about it. If Zach, if you don't mind, because I've noticed this as well. Me and my dad have been talking about this for a long time because we've felt there have been a lot of times where the offense is just purely opportunistic scoring. Where the reason they get so many great goals is because they capitalize on a 2-on-1 or they get a really good opportunity on a power play. Just having a good power play back when they had line, or whatever the situation might be. It wasn't because they were scoring great, driving great 5-on-5 play. Even though there have been times where they've been the best team in the league, like neck on par with Tampa and all the other greats in the league at being great on 5-on-5. But I've noticed that too. And my biggest thing with the Jets is that I notice for one, they hold the puck a lot. They're a very patient team.
Yep.
And two, the other big thing that I notice about their shot selection is as worse than a Pee-wee 15-year-old league team. Like, it is. Think about how many shots you watch that just get blocked, or like you see that, for example, the guy curls off of the boards, right? Like getting the puck from going around the net, and he immediately shoots it to the net with 4 guys in front. Like, no chance that puck the goalie even like has it gets to the goalie, right? It's not even about the goalie seeing the puck. It's not going to get through unless you have like ping pong happening, basically bouncing off of every guy's leg. So I think that's the big issue, is that their poor shot selection. And then they score really good. Like when they score a lot of goals, they score because they pick off of your mistakes. They don't score a great 5-on-5. That's my biggest thing with it, and I think it is the only other reason. Like the only reasons I can logically think about this point too.
Yeah, and I would say actually yes, to kind of bounce off of that. Yeah, and also too, it's just some of the little things, like how many times on a 2-on-1, like for example, if Scheifele gets into the zone on a 2-on-1 and he's on the left side, like his left. He's not shooting it, because what he likes to do is he likes to bring it back behind his body and then do a pass back. He rarely shoots it. And it's one of those times where it's like, if you never shoot that, Scheifele, we will never know if you were going to score. And in terms of defensive chances, there are so many times, I like to call it the Bull U house, because whenever Bull U took a shot, it was either blue line, wall, Bull U. He never moved from there. And how many times have we seen guys from like Forbert as well? They shoot there. All we see is it go right off the glass, rims around all the way out, and now we're either having to reset up the play or the other team's getting a chance. It's one of those things where, like Jake said, if we're not capitalizing on your mistakes, we are rarely scoring 5-on-5. And it's funny because it always feels like even our power plays are kind of stuck, but then you look in the stat totals, like, oh my god, we have a top 10 power play. How did this happen? Where did this come from?
All of our goals come from there. We just don't realize it sometimes.
So there's an interesting thing about our power play and the shot selection you have. See, I don't know why we're not getting a lot of shots, but I do know why we're scoring on the shots we're scoring. So there's this theory in hockey, as advanced stats come in. Corsi and Fenwick, I yell at Corsi and Fenwick all the time. I'm not a huge believer in them because they're just putting shots towards the net, and those don't count for quality shots. You really have 3 categories of shots. You have what's called a green chance, and a green chance means you move the puck over this fictitious line called the Royal Road. The Royal Road is a north to south line. You draw it between the middle center ice dot and the middle of the net, and it's just a lateral line.
Right.
If a puck crosses the Royal Road, whether it's through a stick handle, think a breakaway and a big dangle when you see the guys do the nice big toe drag dangle, or more likely a pass across the Royal Road, think a 2-on-1, that's your highest percentage chance to score in the NHL.
Because the goalie has to change his angle. Yeah.
Correct. It's a big change of angle. The second thing that's a big part of a green chance is if you go from bottom to top, meaning like think Gretzky in his house, right? You're behind the goal line, you change the angle of the puck up to the top of the circle and you shoot. That's just as good of a chance. So I can see that they're scoring and trying to set up those quality chances as opposed to the Corsi Fenwick, the old boring, let's just get pucks on net. Mm-hmm. Because your red chances are just chances that come from, they don't cross the Royal Road, there's no pass, and there's no screen, you're just shooting.
Right.
The goalie's got a 98 to 99% chance to stop those, unless your name's Austin Matthews. So they're not taking those shots, but
on the point,
it still feels really low. Like 19, I can't.
But it's like that constantly, where they don't have
all the time.
We're almost always outshot. Always.
Every game. Game.
It's also another reason why we're outshot per se. Sorry to cut you off there, Zach. You can actually continue.
That's
there.
okay.
Are you sure? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Go.
What is that the fact that a lot of the time when the Jets have a lead, the defense, they allow more shots, and that's when Connor Hellebuyck kind of becomes, the puck stopper, and he just absorbs a lot of shots, and that's why we seem to be outshot a lot. But getting back to what I said, I think a lot of it just comes down to when the opportunistic shooting the puck, like just opportunistic scoring, and they just don't really, like, how many times do the Jets, like, me and Zach always harken on this, and this is an example of them having that pass first mentality. 2-on-1s. Mm-hmm. We do not we like Scheifele especially is like notorious for this. We just always make that pass. Like when last game when Lowry was selfish and shot that puck, it was a beautiful play. I was shocked because I was like, Jesus, why haven't we been doing that all year long? Like, take your shot, Lowry. If you can shoot like that, why are you making the impossible sauce over to Appleton, who's already past the goal line? Like, what are you doing?
He did it
Like
twice.
they do that constantly, and I think that's a problem because like that was for example, I know it was opportunistic scoring because it was a 2-on-1, but it was still 5-on-5. Like they actually were they made the right play and scored because they weren't forcing a pass. If the Jets just shoot the puck more, our shot total will go up. And that's all they really have to do. It's just not be so picky with what you shoot. And I come off of this with a Canucks fan as well. Pettersson is horrible at doing this, where he just has the puck and he hovers and he just goes from blue line to blue line, skating back and forth, dropping it to Myers on the power play, and he's just looking for a lane to shoot that puck. And when he has possibly a decent opportunity or an okay screen, but he's not confident on it, he holds it. Even if it's a pretty decent opportunity, if he's not confident in it, he doesn't shoot the puck. And that's kind of how the Jets are, but the Jets just always try to make that fancy play. They're always trying to make the highlight score. And then they think about it, they don't even really have those dirty goals. Like how many goals do you see where a guy is scrambling in front of the net to really put it in, minus maybe Lowry at times and Appleton when he drives to the net occasionally. Like we just don't have that. We always have trying to make the pass first mentality, and we've been that team for a while. And that needs to change in my opinion, and use all of our strengths, kind of what you're harking on, Coach. And I just think that that's something that they need to do, and that'll easily get your shot total up because you're just putting more opportunity on the goalie and to crack and let one in. Even if it's a 99% chance he saves it, I'd rather have a one extra shot on than a whistle or we shoot the puck and it goes wide or we lose the puck making a perfect pass or whatever the situation might be. But that's just me. I'm just a shoot first guy. I'd rather have a whistle than have to lose the puck and reset my play and play defense. But that's just me, and that's just how I like to coach.
Well, and you know what they're not doing though? So there's 3 opportunities when you're coming in. You got a pass, and if the pass is there, you're right, make the pass. But you said it best: impossible sauce. As soon as it's impossible sauce, don't throw it over.
But
your second thing to do is what they call a pass off the pad or a pop shot, meaning you're shooting far pad, right? You're shooting low far pad to bank it off, so you can get some junk at the net. We don't do that ever
because we don't drive the net. We don't drive the net. We never have guys picking up those garbage goals. We never have guys there. That's a huge problem.
I would say from a goaltender point of view, those shots suck. Because you can nicest save, and then you just sit there and you're like, there's a stick. Damn it.
Yep.
Like, and the thing is how many times do we see this when they're entering the zone? Dump and chase, rim it around the boards. And the time where it's the most insulting is against the Oilers. Because who's going to go down there and grab the puck? Mike Smith. Mike Smith has made his career off of this, where if you dump the puck in on Mike Smith, he's getting it, he's putting it right to his defenseman. And it's like, just shoot it at him. Just shoot at him. Because even if he has to make a save and move it, you are taking time away from him and how his defensemen operate. Like, just do something. Do not let him be the first pass in a breakout on a daily basis.
Hey. Zach, can I ask you something about goaltending? Because you brought it up, and I think this will close out our show.
Yes.
We know Connor Hellebuck is elite. We know Carey Price is elite. Talking about the 4 teams going into the playoffs. But I've said this on my podcast. Mike Smith may be hot right now, but he's dust. This guy he's not good.
He's not.
He's
not been good for a long time.
Well, Oiler fans get on me all the time. Oh, look at his stats. Yeah, okay, I get it. The point of, being a goalie is to win the game, and he's winning the game. This can't hold forever, can it? Jack Campbell.
Not to mention the fact that he's quite old.
Okay.
They're terrible. So talk to me about Campbell and Smith. Can this bullshit hot streak hold?
I'm going to pull up Mike Smith's stats real quick for us to just quickly go over talking
his stats
about
are amazing.
I know.
His actual play
I want to
is
focus on his stats going back to 2018-19, and I'm not going to go in depth, obviously, onto every single goaltending stat. Let's just talk about his wins over the last 3 seasons from 2017-18, obviously to now. In 2017-18 with Calgary, he was 25-22. Exactly. 25 wins, yay, but he lost 22 games. I think that's whatever. What that doesn't matter. Exactly. The next season after that, 23 wins, 16 losses. Again, that's not a good record at all. Like, yeah, you won 23 games, but that's not the greatest. And then
you're not getting much.
And then obviously last year was a shortened season. He played 39 games, 12 losses, with 19 wins. That's okay, but again, it's nothing fantastic. It's just basically average goaltender for like a guy that's not really that great. And then And then this year he's 19-6, and this year has been his best year in a long time by far, without a question. But he's still, like, I agree with Coach. I still agree he's like his best year by numbers, but it doesn't mean that he's some elite goaltender in an elite company in the North. He's just, Connor McDavid's carrying them in a very weak division to a lot of wins. Like, their top 6 is really carrying them, and Mike Smith has been stable for times at them, but he's not elite. He's not some stopper, and he's not going to last much longer because he's 40 years old next year.
Yeah, so looking at the two goalies we talked about, or we just mentioned on, was Mike Smith and Jack Campbell. Now, with Jack Campbell, it's been interesting because we've already seen him humbled. He won his first 12. He then lost like two or three of his next ones, including getting pulled against Winnipeg. And I think if you're Jack Campbell, you hate to have it happen, but I think realistically speaking, it's better for him to have that humbling experience now, because a goaltender going in as an unbeatable god gets targeted right away by opposing teams' shooters. I think with Jack Campbell, I think he's having a better year than anyone really thought he would, and he's had to fill a void that Toronto has had, because Toronto has made, on paper, all the right decisions. They picked up the right guys. They realized that Tyson Barrie was an offensive defenseman that didn't work in their system. What they do? They grabbed TJ Brody. Right call. They brought up the right rookies to have pretty much an all-in push, and they picked up a guy who can really play well. He can keep up with the Matthews-Marner line in terms of Nick Foligno, who did fine. That being said, though, it's very interesting to think about how Jack Campbell would be doing on any other team.
I agree.
And exactly as Jack Campbell's done his whole career. Dust.
Exactly. I agree, Coach. I like to call these guys
an okay goalie.
I call the guys like Campbell.
On his work, on the when the team doesn't perform, it's not like he will elevate a team beyond what the team is playing. It's not like a Connor Hellebuyck where if the team can play like terrible and he'll carry them to a 1-1 tie going overtime. Now, going to Mike Smith, I compare to the comparison I like to make, I guess, would be Marc-Andre Fleury first year Vegas, in terms of, because let's be honest, Marc-Andre Fleury going into that season with Vegas had a bounce back playoffs in Pittsburgh.
Bounce back playoffs. He was a god. He's the reason why the Jets didn't go to the Stanley Cup.
First 2 rounds, he carried them there.
He destroyed us.
The entire season, not amazing. I think with Smith, it's one of those things where, first off, stop shooting glove hand on Smith. He wants that. He wants to catch the puck. Shoot blocker hand on Smith. As a goalie myself, I hate it when people shoot blockers. I'm the full right, so people always think, oh, we'll go blocker side. And then they go, and then I catch it in this hand. And they're like, oh, right, other way. And it's one of those things where, also, too, Connor McDavid is just outscoring every team scoring. Like, Connor McDavid has got to the point where he's 4 points, I think, away from 100. And he's got 4 games left. Which, with other people, he'd be like, I don't know. With Connor McDavid, you're just like, I bet he beats it in 2. Like, and with Mike Smith, I think he could have a decent playoffs. I think, though, if they're not careful and if they don't take enough care of Mike Smith and know when to pull him on the bad games, he could really just fall apart completely. And I would say also, too, it's worth remembering, for as okay as Mike Smith did last year, Edmonton made a very bad mistake. They played Mike Smith in Game 1 against Chicago. Arguably, the reason they lose that series is because they played Mike Smith Game 1 against Chicago. If you remember the Game 1, it was nuts. Nobody thought Chicago was going to beat Edmonton. They were like, yeah, okay, Edmonton's got a lock for the playoffs. They're going to finally do it. Chicago scored like 4 goals, if I remember, right off the bat, including one that went off the back of Mike Smith. And then they pull him and put Koskinen in. And in that game, there was a lot of scoring. Like, Oilers put up a lot of goals in that game, I think, which should have been enough to win any other game. And for the rest of the series, they were handicapped because they had to win one more good game than Chicago did, because they already had a good game, but they lost. And that's something I see, though, too. If they put Smith in and he has a bad game and they don't have the decency to put Koskinen in, because Koskinen is not great. And as I say this, Koskinen landed 4 goals on 4 shots tonight, so that's not good. But he's not a bad goalie. He's an okay goalie. He's an okay goalie. He's I would say, an arguable starter in a tandem. He's not a solid lock. But if they can't make the right decision of when to pull Smith and when to put in Koskinen, it will cost them games that they deserve to win. McDavid was over a point per game in a series they lost in 4
But getting
He'll
back
always
getting
be the
back
point.
to things with this year though, are there any goaltenders that you're really scared of going into a playoff match, Coach, and Zach as well? Because for me personally, like right now I'm looking up on I have NHL player comparison open right now. I've just been when
Right.
Zach's been talking about goaltenders, it was just making me curious about like what goaltenders would really even be a threat to the Jets if you were to really think of it. Because personally, in my opinion, and I don't want to sound harsh because whatever, don't take it. I don't hate the players, but I think that there are a lot of trash goaltenders in the North Division this year that are just having
I'm more
surprisingly good years. Like I call them the Hamburglar goalies, like the one and done type things
Yeah,
where they show
exactly.
up and they're good like that. Like, I call them that, and personally, like Campbell's a Hamburglar, like right, like he's not going to be this future like they think they're going to be for some reason, and it's ridiculous. And then Mike Smith is basically a Hamburglar at this point in his career because he's pulling a lucky season out of his ass
those
with wins.
placeholders.
And then
In
you
2
have
years, they've got nothing left.
Ottawa's the exact same thing. They brought in Murray to stabilize, and now they have Anton Forsberg has been probably their best stable goaltender they've had all
Well,
season. Another
They've
Hamburglar in
brought
my
in some
opinion.
guys, and those guys have done okay.
Yeah, but
actually.
it's
Like,
exactly that's what I'm talking about. They're
ready
Hamburgers
but
though.
They've done okay for the goals they've been given.
The Hamburglar set an NHL record, man, and he's not even in the league. 2 years later, he was in the AHL. Like
That's
it-
bad.
What team did you say that goalie played for? What city?
Ottawa.
Ottawa.
They have a team?
team.
Since when?
Oh my god! I know it's been a few years.
I've been saying forever that you should relocate a team to Ottawa. Like they need an NHL team.
Honestly, yeah. Well, honestly, they'd probably take a relocated franchise over the one they have. Sorry, Ottawa fans. I know it's hard over there.
Can we laugh right now, though? How funny?
Not Kanata.
How funny is Jimmy Stutzel?
I
Like
know.
the fact that Brady Kachuk renamed him Jimmy because he couldn't remember his name, and now it's caught on it's fire. It's
I know,
hilarious.
It's one of those things only the NHL would have. It's just it feels like it's a thing from Letterkenny, honestly.
Oh, completely.
Like,
Third overall
I know.
draft pick, savior of
Can't
the
remember
team.
his
And
name.
what's your name? Jimmy? Sure.
Oh, fucking sticks.
Watching him in the World Juniors was so weird.
Do
'cause
you
he
guys
wanted him
watch
to do
Parks and Rec? Are you guys Parks and Rec
music
fans?
is blind.
Yeah, yeah.
He's Jerry. He said to someone they said his name wrong once, and he's like, "Oh, that's what we're sticking with now." It's just he's got to go with it for the rest of his life now. He's never gonna be called
Yeah,
by his
well,
name.
Absolutely. Him and the human toe, Brady Kachuk. He looks like
Exactly.
a big toe.
Brady Chuck just looks
What
like
a-
a lot of things, man, that
Kinda
aren't
gets up
very
with his own-
Oh
pleasant.
man.
He's
I'd take him on the team though, by the way.
Yeah,
I would
I would too.
take both Kachucks, by the way. I hate the Kachuk, but I would take them both.
You know
Both of
what?
them.
For the Winnipeg, just for the Winnipeg connection, for sure. Why
Can't
not?
control him.
I'd buy a Chuck jersey if he was here.
Keith was a dick. He hated
I
Winnipeg
loved
too.
Keith the Chuck, man. Oh, I know
He didn't
was a
like
dick.
Winnipeg.
I know,
I know
but
that.
I loved him though. He was such a fuck. See. You want to know a weird little story? I grew up obviously not in that era. Like I was born in 2000. The Jets were long gone by then. But my dad, being a hockey nut,
As well.
yeah, we're the same age, Zach. 21.
I'll be
So
down.
I was, to put it in perspective, I was 6 years old when they left.
Okay, so you don't have like the most vivid memories, obviously. of
You
No,
them.
no, I
You have
actually
10
remember
years on us.
being 5 years old. I still have it in my mind, a disposable camera picture of Teemu Selanne getting the golden stick after breaking the rookie goal
Oh,
record.
that's
I was in the
beautiful.
building.
You
Yeah,
lucky
yeah.
motherfucker.
I got one Jets game a year,
that
and that's the Jets game my
90s
parents picked.
90s one
Oh,
right next to
yeah.
that 90s one next to the first Heritage Classic. That's a Timu.
Yeah, he's the man. He's
Oh,
the man.
I love that man.
Okay, so you asked about what goalie I'd be afraid of to
Yeah.
wrap up the point on
Yeah.
goalies. I'm terrified of Jack Campbell because Jack Campbell's a guesser. I hate guessers. He's fundamentally flawed.
Exactly.
He is not a good goalie for a reason, but the reason he is keeping pucks out of the net, he's doing things you shouldn't be doing, and it's throwing players off. That is a real thing. You're like, oh, I shoot here, I
Thank you
score.
for
Why is he
saying
there?
that. I've noticed that too. It's like I just get a weird vibe when I watch him in net. It's like you're not supposed to be here. I feel like almost watching him. That's what it
Not.
looks like. It's like a beer
He's
league guy
guessing.
got called up and he's like, what? It's like what do you call it? Like the
Very
mighty. It's the Mighty
proactive
Ducks.
with his
It's the
best
Mighty
great
Ducks. All of a
saves.
sudden, the
Very
worst
good.
team, the team that got beat 21-0, they're gonna show up and beat the champs because they have the flying V. Movie
Yep.
magic, baby. That's exactly what he's like. It feels like watching him.
Oh, I gotta
He's
watch
a-
that as well. Oh man.
So there's only other two prominent guessing goalies in the NHL that have had success. So fundamentally flawed for their time, but they won Stanley Cups. Can you name them both?
I'd say
okay,
Matt Murray.
Hasek is one of them.
Okay, Hasek is absolutely one of them. He's the definition of it.
Hasek's
Okay,
one of the
he's
greatest
great.
goaltenders of all
He won the
time.
cup.
But he had no form. He just
Yeah, but that's
flopped,
why
and
he
it
was one of the
worked.
greatest
No, no,
goaltenders of
he
all
won.
time. Like his form was no
Both in the
form. His
cup.
form was Jesus, basically. He was like, I stop puck. That was what he
I'll give
did.
you I'll give you a hint, Zach, on number 2. The hint is this player didn't report to the White House.
I was about to say, I said Tim Thomas. I said.
Oh
Tim
yeah, I
Thomas.
couldn't hear you. Put a mic on. Tim Thomas, you're correct.
Oh my God!
Tim
Don't
Thomas
stop. As
is
a
a
Canucks fan, I command you to
Goalie
stop.
guy knows goalies.
Stop. In the
Yep.
name of all Canucks fans, and if you're watching, no, stop.
So,
That name is banned from my house.
So out of the history of all guessing goaltenders in the NHL, and they have been fundamentally flawed guessing goaltenders, your Hamburglar was a great example too. They usually don't stick. They fizz out. They have a brief window, but those two guys won a cup.
Well,
Those two guys won a
Hamburglar
cup.
and them. Didn't the Hamburglar go to the second round?
Yeah, he did.
He did.
And then
It was out of
never to be
nowhere.
heard-
Yeah,
never to
exactly.
be heard from
In
again.
fairness, I will say one thing about the Hamburglar. He showed up in that Colorado, like for 2 games for Colorado. He did. He did. I will not take that away from him. He came out of nowhere and was back to forward for 2 games, and then he.
He should have had a shutout, and then they got blown the heck out 5-0 in the final. But
I know.
He should have got a shutout. Like Bonino kicked the puck in. I remember this. I was like, how did you call this no kicking?
I will never. I will give him
Give
credit
that
there. I
Hamburglar
will
a
give him
shutout.
credit there to the Hamburglar.
You know, when you say
Yeah.
Bonino, the only thing I can think of is the Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi broadcast.
Bonino. Yep, those guys are
They're the
awesome.
best broadcasting team in hockey. I don't even care if I don't know what they're saying. I'm not making fun of them. None of it. I wish hockey broadcasters were as excited as these guys were.
Exactly, man.
And Dennis Bayek's good. He is good. But like the rest of them sound so monotone. I just want to be excited when hockey is called, and he's excited.
Who are your favorite calls in terms of like name 2 or 3 broadcasts? Okay, so mine, Gord Miller for sure, because I grew up watching the World Juniors. That guy was like the voice of my childhood, and I will never forget that early goal. And Gary Thorne, the guy who used to do the Detroit games when I was younger, was amazing.
I know exactly who I want, and it
Okay.
is Jack Edwards off Nesson for Bruins games. If
I
you
hate
have
him.
ever heard, if you've ever heard a bias,
I hate him for
You're
that. Me and my
pro
friends can't
Bruins.
stand Boston
I
because of him.
love him for that. I know you're a Canucks guy, man, but like,
He's
here's
just
what Canada
so
doesn't do
biased,
for-
so biased.
here's what Canada doesn't do for broadcast though. Here's what I wish we did it. It's a local broadcast. Be biased to the local team. It's a blackout. No one else is watching it. So I don't mind if Dennis Bayak would just.
He is.
Yeah,
Dennis
I don't
Bayak
mind
is
it.
definitely a freaking. He favors them. Okay, my favorites.
Yeah, he does.
My favorites for me, like kind of like Zach growing up, it's Canuck commentators John Shorthouse, John Garrett, and Dan Murphy. Those guys are absolute gems. And they definitely call a great game, and they're a little biased at times too, and it's kind of fun because they're
Did
biased
they
on the
cover
plays that they deserve to be biased.
goal?
What was that?
Did they Burrow's goal? Were they the ones
Yes,
that
they
called
were.
the Burrows?
They slayed the
Okay,
dragon.
that would I just need to base it off memories. I don't remember their names.
And then obviously I put Bayak up there as well because I think that Dennis Bayak does a very good job at calling a clean, good game with, and he's energetic at times. He's passionate for the Jets. You can tell he loves the loves the city and he loves the team. And I really value that. I really value people that just love the team. It's important to me that not only they're fans of the team, but they're fans of the city. Like Winnipeg is such an undervalued shit-on city, and I really is important to me when like they love the fans. They get like they're really involved with everything, and like they're just passionate about that. And I think that he is. So I'm a big fan of him for that.
You know what's the most unfair thing about people picking on Winnipeg?
What's that?
Nobody, unless you're from Winnipeg, doesn't realize how good the people from Winnipeg are.
I do.
I can deal when people say we have a dirty city. I can deal with it because when NHL players come here and they see all the sand on the street because we have snow plows and stuff that gotta.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand some of the knocks that we get, but it's the people that make Winnipeg special.
Yeah.
But you can't quantify that. You only know it if you live here. So I mean, like, shout out to good people here. But I mean, yeah, we're small. I think Victoria's Secret just closed in St. Vincent Mall. We couldn't keep it going. Our roads are trash. We have mosquitoes. We have good summers, but that's
Beautiful summers. Honestly,
Yeah, it's fun.
I love Winnipeg. As a guy who never lived there, I've never lived there full time or nothing like that.
Yeah.
But for me, what makes Winnipeg great and why I always defend it is I live in Vancouver. Well, not Vancouver. I don't live in Vancouver per se, but Lower Mainland. You know all that is basically. It's all those surrounding cities. Point being, I go to Vancouver, you go to any city in the Lower Mainland, and you see there are more greasy, gross, homeless people here than you see anywhere in Winnipeg. And like people like to shit on Winnipeg for being a crime capital, and it's like, man, my family and where I spend in Winnipeg is the North End, and it's like I've seen it all, and I've seen it all in Vancouver, and I've seen it all everywhere. It's just every city has crime, every city's got drugs and homeless. It's just if that's a knock on a city you're using to dig it, like it's like get out of here with that. Every city is trash for that. No city can get big city gets away clean with that. None. Every city I've been to is homeless. Any part of the country, and even in the U.S., it's just something that big cities have. And I hate that Winnipeg gets knocked on for that because it's like, come on, go to Vancouver. It's worse around the frickin' stadium going to the hotel to the stadium than it is in Winnipeg by far.
Yeah.
But you know what the tough thing is about Winnipeg, though? The tough thing about Winnipeg, if you're visiting Winnipeg and not from Winnipeg, is that it's very hard to find something to do because everything to do in Winnipeg involves you and your crew of people. So unlike a Vancouver, a Montreal, or Toronto, when I
disagree,
go, I could go to a bar in Toronto and I can make a friend.
I
If
can
I
do
go
that
to
in
a bar in
Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, they usually already have a friend and they're not super interested in making friends with them.
Well, that's just because it's a smaller town, though. You guys don't even have. You guys just have over like 1.1 or like even 1 million, if that, right? Like you're not that huge of a city. That's why.
750.
No, you have more than that. You guys have more than that.
No, it's 750. Pull it up.
Well, that's an old
Winnipeg
stat.
population.
My aunt works in government, and she just told me recently you guys passed over 1 million. I'm
the
almost.
province, the entire province.
No, I swore it was Winnipeg.
I'm pulling it up. Hold on.
I thought that was like from
Winnipeg.
2016, 2017. I thought that was an old number.
It is. Okay, we finally cracked 800. It's 817.
Ah, okay.
And,
All right.
and it's 817, including the, ready for it, our metro area, because Stonewall and Selkirk get included. Not that they're bad people, but like I'm talking, when you talk about a burb like North Delta or Poco or Coquitlam, these are burbs, man. Like Mississauga's a burb. Stonewall and Selkirk they're towns. They're very small towns.
Yes.
Good people, small towns.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, good times. Okay, guys, this was fun.
Yeah, it was. This was a great episode. So, yeah, make sure to go ending this off, everybody, for all of you beautiful viewers out there. Make sure to go check out every single one of our channels because we're going to be rotating these uploads. So, as you guys see right now, our beautiful faces are here right now on my channel. Next week, they're going to be on Coach's, and then they're going to be on Zach's the week after that. And we're going to be doing that system, following that every week, rotating it like that, unless for some reason technical difficulties or someone can't upload in time. Point being, that's the way it is. So, if you like this show, definitely subscribe to watch us and hear it on YouTube. Also, make sure to check out our Spotify page where you can watch it on the go, at work, in the car, wherever you are doing your thing, if you want to hear our opinions on the world of hockey and sports. So with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning into our first episode. I'm Jake.
I'm Ryan, and do not forget to join our Discord group down there too. We
I
just
forgot
saw
about
one of
that.
our buddies.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can jump into a podcast apparently on our Discord
Exactly.
group. So join
We'll
in.
we'll throw you in. You get your name drop in there.
And I'm Zach.
And this is us, and this is the Prairie Puck Podcast signing off episode 1. See you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Peace out. God bless.